You guys can find stuff?
Yeah, we can barbecue wildfire.
Yeah, I was glad that they were still gonna do fireworks.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All line ones. It's okay, I had a meeting after meeting today, so. I'm meeting with you, yes, meeting with. And Andrea, yes, I have something here too. Perfect. Yeah. Oh my God, yes. Is the sound on and everything? I believe so. Bob's on me. Everybody's on mute.
There we go. Hello,
Hello.
we have Liz and Lisa.
And then Liz in the room. Liz, and Lisa.
Liz, wow, triple L,
Seriously.
kind of like triple T. Let's see, full
Liz, Gordon, and Lisa.
screen. There we go. How's everybody doing?
Doing well.
Lisa, you're in Oklahoma, for goodness sake.
Wow. How's Oklahoma?
Hot. Always
hot.
hot. Yeah, see,
Hot.
told you.
Hot and windy.
See? That's why we sell real estate here,
True.
right?
It is much better in Colorado than it is here.
Okay, hold on one second. I just gotta get something real quick.
Lisa, you're missing out on the rainy and thunderstorm weather that
I'm
we've been
so
having.
not missing out, honey. I've had enough in Colorado. At least the place isn't on fire though.
Well, that's a plus. Definitely
Yes.
a plus.
We needed that. We needed it. We really did.
Yes.
How are you doing, honey?
Doing well. I'm up
Good,
in
good.
Boulder this week, so I wasn't able to make it
Oh.
into the office, but Boulder's rainy as well, so.
Yep, it's rainy everywhere there. And then it'll be nice for a couple days and dry us out. Then we're
Yep.
soggy again.
Soggy, I like that. Yeah, we are a little soggy right now.
We are.
I'm back.
About time.
True, true.
About time. Can you guys all hear okay?
Yes.
Okay. So, questions that anybody has, either Liz or Lisa, or Elena is on too. Any questions you've had from maybe previewing or showing on anything? I've talked about lock boxes before, which I will do again because there's a host of different types of lock boxes that sometimes you guys have problems getting into. Especially Sentry Lock. I don't know if you've had the ability to open a Sentry Lock yet, but they're electronic. And if you don't have the app, which you probably don't yet, when you set up a showing, either Broker Bay or Showing Time will send you a day code. And the reason for that is the electronic lock boxes they limit who can get in. Now, yes, an agent can be not forthright and they could give that electronic lockbox code to their buyer. What we're trying to do is limit the people that are getting into the house. It isn't 100% guarantee that only an agent is getting into that house because unfortunately some agents give lock boxes out to their buyers. Right, Charles?
Right, crack the window.
Yes, so, you know, in the days of foreclosures, we had a huge problem with agents just giving lock boxes out to all kinds of buyers, and buyers were entering properties, although vacant, they weren't licensed and they weren't supposed to be doing that, of course, but they were, and they were doing it, I bet, as much as 50% of the time. So the electronic lock boxes, I just wanted to kind of go over that because not everybody's familiar. Well, why do I have this code here? So if you go to an electronic lockbox, and I wish I had one here, I can try to pull up a picture and see if I can get a picture of one so you'll know what it is. Let's see, I don't have it there. Let me see if I can find one real quick, another place. Let's see, electronic lockbox. This is the new ones. And the nice thing about these new ones is when you open them, the key drops out of the bottom. I shouldn't say the key. The compartment drops out of the bottom with the key in it. It used to be, and I still have the older boxes, they have a very big lid and they open up and they fall, the front opens out and they stick out quite a ways. So the problem is when you open them, and if you're not careful, that will, and when you go to close the door, it will hit the jamb and it will dent the door jamb. So the new ones are nice in that they don't, that it doesn't cause that issue, but this is what the new ones look like. You're going to mostly see older ones because most people haven't upgraded to the new ones yet because they run about $135 each. But once you have them, you have them. Okay. And when the battery gets low, which I've had the first one go low, I just got notification. The nice thing about these lock boxes, and I know Lyndon, this is a little bit of a refresh for you, maybe you too, Elena, but I just wanted newer agents to know how to operate these because they're a little different. What you do is when you get to the property, it's going to have a code for you and you're going to hit the enter button, which is at the bottom right. That wakes up the lockbox. So you'll see all the numbers will kind of light up for a second. Then you're going to put in it's either going to be a 7 or an 8-digit code, something like that. You put in the code and then you push enter. And then you typically are going to hear the lockbox kind of thinking, waking up, and then the key box should drop down and hopefully has the key in it, right? If you get to a house and you're showing and there's no key, call the listing agent immediately to just let them know. And then also, if you don't get the listing agent, call the showing service that you're going through, either Broker Bay or Showing Time, and just let them know, hey, there is no key, because chances are the previous agent may have taken the key with them. I've been guilty of that before myself, because you kind of forget. If you put the key in your pocket and you walk away, sometimes you end up running back across town to put the key back in the lockbox. But just stay in touch with the listing agent. But again, these newer Sentry locks are nice because of that feature where they just open up straight down and they don't ding up the door. Okay. So other lock boxes we'll talk about another time, but I just wanted to let you know about this. Is a new one that came out. I'm not sure how long ago, but I've seen him now for the last 2 months. I've seen them in operation and it is nice. And they're much slimmer and just a better overall lockbox. The good thing is if you're a listing agent, once you use the code, that's it. You can't use that code again. So somebody can't get back into the lockbox unless they call and set up a showing if they don't have the app. Now, I have the app on my phone. When I approach any electronic lockbox that's Sentry Lock, all that I have to do is hit the enter key to wake it up. I go to my app and say search for nearby properties, and that property will show up. I click on that address, and then it'll open up my code on my app. I put in my code, and it'll open up the lockbox. Okay, I don't even have to put in a code. So it's a very nice feature in a dark, stormy night or whenever. You don't have to be punching in numbers. Okay, any questions? Nope. We all know them now.
Bob,
So, yes,
just making sure, is this the right, oh, you probably can't see it. The app, I just want to make sure that I have the right app downloaded. It says Century Key Real Estate. It has the same logo, so I assume it's the
it
right.
has, it has a logo like that. And it may have a different logo than when I got my app because, you know, I do things back in the prehistoric age, so. My
Liz, I
app,
think that actually is not the right one. You want it to
this is
say,
what it, yeah,
sorry, Bob, Century Connect. I've been through this before.
Century Connect, it's that
Yeah.
one.
Okay, that's the second one that shows up then. Yes, it has a different logo. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Appreciate it.
Yep,
Bob, this is Lyndon. Did you already discuss like the price for these? Are they very expensive or are they competitive?
well, they're, it's price fixed because they own the lock boxes, so they're 135-ish, I believe now. The older ones were 125, and I think these are 135. But it's a good idea too to maybe call the I don't know who, if they're selling them like down at DMAR. That's where I picked up my older ones, and they might have them for a little bit less. You can't go anywhere like to Home Depot or Lowe's or anything. They don't carry them. And you probably can order them direct from Century Lock. And maybe they give you a discount if you buy a few. I have, I think, 5 for up here in Denver, and then I have 1 for Colorado Springs. But I don't think you need to have it for a different jurisdiction anymore. I think you can use any lockbox anywhere as long as you're with Century Lock. Okay, but it's a great system, and it's nice to have the app too, because it makes your entry into it much simpler, and it keeps track of everything too. Plus, they have an alarm that when you're showing a house, you can have it so that you can send an emergency without doing really much of anything. So if you're showing a buyer you don't know, you can have that armed so it will set off in case something would occur. Okay. Does that answer your question, Lyndon? Hope so.
One more question, Bob. Is
Sure.
the app called Century Key Real Estate? Is that the name of the app?
It is.
Okay.
Let me look it up to be sure. It's Century Key Real Estate.
We were just talking about, I think it's the Century Connect.
Okay, now mine is
At least-
Century Key. I think the new one is Century Connect then,
Oh,
because I have a little bit older version of it, I believe. Okay. So let's talk about the outside of the house and how poor drainage. Because when I go up to show a house, the first thing I'm looking at overall is I'm not just looking at the house first, I am looking at how the house is situated in a subdivision. And by that, I mean, is there a hill that on the street that you're showing? And is this house at the top of the hill? Is it in the middle of the hill coming down? Or is it at the very bottom of the hill? And it makes a difference, because if you have a fairly steep hill, and I don't know if all of you are aware of, like, you know, where Ward Road goes north off of 64th and goes over to 72nd, and you go up a very steep hill and you come back down a very steep hill. And those houses typically at the bottom of those hills are going to have a tendency to have more groundwater. It just makes sense, because when it rains, like, I don't know if you guys got it last night, but we had an absolute cloud burst for 5 minutes here in Arvada last night that was unreal. It flooded the street in 5 minutes, and you get a rain like that and groundwater goes towards that house that it's at the bottom of the hill, and you can have some serious problems. Or if you just have rain where it's, you know, raining all day for 40 days and 40 nights, kind of like what we've had this year. So just you guys see those pictures okay? You're showing a house and you see a bunch of puddling around the sides of the house. Well, number one, what do you notice about this lot? It's very flat, right? And if you're going to show older homes, typically the lots were quite flat. And by older, I mean, early 1900s into the 50s, 60s. They didn't worry much about building up the slope to the house. Whereas nowadays, when you go show brand new homes, they all have some fall off from the foundation down away from the house on all four sides, or however many sides there are in the home. You want the water getting away from the house. Okay. Now, this is a good example of somebody, they know that they've got a problem here, but instead of just putting this extension on here to get the water away from the house, they shouldn't have these plants around here. Not a good idea to have greenery right up next to the foundation, especially if they need water to stay alive. So these aren't as big a deal as like big shrubs where people will put in shrubs that need quite a bit of water. You really don't want anything that has to be watered other than naturally within about 4 or 5 feet of the foundation. Okay. Doesn't mean that people aren't going to buy a house from you. If you say, hey, you might down the road, you might want to consider getting rid of these. Sellers are probably not going to get rid of anything like that, but it's just something to be aware of, because water is your number one enemy when the water gets penetrating into the soils and into the foundation area. It will do things to the house that you can't even imagine. Okay. So always be aware of, things that like this. I mean, you're showing a house, in this house, which doesn't look like much, but it backs up to something like this. This could overflow and come running down to the house. Not that we see something like that typically, but pooling in an area of the yard is a good indication that there's just no slope working away from the house. Something like that, where you have, here's your AC unit, which it's kind of sitting on level because there's quite a bit of pooling. The ground is soft, and you've got a downspout here coming out that's just dumping water. And that's another big thing to look at when you're showing houses and downspout extensions. Those extensions are important. They need to get the water at least 3 or 4 feet away from the house. And a lot of times you'll see people who just have a downspout that comes down, and where does it go? It goes onto the sidewalk and it goes off to the side. And over the years, you see that sidewalk as the soils underneath have softened. And even though the picture is a little bit crooked, that sidewalk is crooked. Okay. So because that water is draining over to the side, it sinks down in the soil, and then the soil gets moistened and it starts to sink, and everything becomes uneven. And then it can start affecting your foundation wall, or whatever type of foundation you have. If it's a foundation for a basement, or if it's a crawl space, or whatever. So these are just a bunch of different pictures that came up, but this is the one good thing about showing properties this time of year is, with all the rain we've had, you're going to find out where water tends to be draining to in a yard. This is a huge key here. Now notice, I'm going to zoom in. They have these downspouts, and they have a pipe going down in the ground. Where does that pipe go? Most of the time you can't find the end of that pipe. And this could be coming out and exiting out here. It might be running to the front of the house and trying to get the water away. But obviously this house has a serious problem getting water away from it. And as the water sits there over many years, not saying that the water will stay there for years, but as water softens the ground each time it rains, it sinks, and it starts sinking more and more, and it starts penetrating back towards the foundation, and it starts working on the walls. So when you're showing houses, be very aware of what the foundation, I don't know why we have that one. Be very aware of what's happening when you're looking at homes and the effect that that's having. Let's see what they have here. Dry Creek grading. I don't think they'll have any pictures there. Nope. So any questions on that? So and what I'm gonna do is pull up photos of some houses in a few minutes from MLS, so that we can look at houses and the difference in appearance of what they look like, and things that I start notating before I ever go look at houses, because I take notes on what I'm gonna show and write them on the listing. Because I do old fashioned, I don't just carry the listing on my phone, I actually print it out, and I have notes that I take when I show, to make sure that before I get there, I may have written down, check out the lock, check out the electrical panel, it looks old, check out the drainage, check out the roofing, because in the photos, the roofing looks shot, different things like that. So I make sure I remember to check those things out. So we'll look at some houses online and some potential problems that we could see on those. Next, does everybody know what the difference between a full basement and a crawl space is? Okay, so this is pretty much a pretty tall crawl space. Some crawl spaces are only maybe 18 inches, 20 inches above grade. So you'd be crawling around on your stomach. Some are a couple of feet, and sometimes in houses with a crawl space, they will install a furnace in the crawl space. And if you have somebody who's adverse to crawling down in a crawl space with the snakes and the spiders to change the filter, you might want to point that out, because a lot of times the furnace is installed down here, and it's what they call a horizontal furnace. They don't stand up straight, they lay down on their side, and they also have shorter hot water heaters that are maybe 3 feet tall or something, and they're short and stubby. But this is actually a pretty good crawl space, and you've got these support blocks here that are supporting the beam down underneath. Not that you guys are ever going to crawl down in a crawl space, but this is, you should know kind of what a crawl space is about and what it looks like. You have the floor joists running side to side. You have copper plumbing running down here. You have sewer line pipe running along down there, the white PVC pipe. So all of those are things that when you see some photos, at least you know what you're looking at. Let's see. So when you get into this is more or less an average crawl space that you might see, where you kind of have to crawl around. And he's looking through here. It looks like somebody has foam filled the brick. That's not concrete. They probably had some issues with drainage or whatever many years. This looks like judging from that brick, it's a very, very old home. And they've tried to secure it some by getting the foam in there to help make sure there's no moisture penetrating. But, and again, you guys aren't going to be crawling around these crawl spaces, but you can peek down in them sometimes, or take a picture with your camera and blow it up and look at it while you're there. This is another one. This has got piers all through it with supports for the beams running across. This is a very clean, nice, with a polyurethane type plastic around the edges and around the floor. That's very clean. This is more normal what you'll see with a cinder block foundation. Not, when you get into the older homes, into the 50s, 40s, 30s, you a lot of times are not going to find a wall of concrete. You're going to find blocks of cinder block that they formed the house with, or the foundation. Can you see that, you guys? Those are cinder block there. And what's wrong with this? It's got water in it. So another thing about showing houses this time of year with this much rain is you're going to see if the house has issues with drainage. And and you can tell by this dark spot here and around this column. What do you think that is caused from?
Flooding and potential mold.
Could be potential mold, because the water could have actually been up that high in the basement or in the crawl space. And that moisture is probably not going away. So what can happen too is all that moisture is building up down here. It starts attaching itself to the floor joists and to the flooring. and you start growing mold in places you shouldn't be growing mold, right? So people can get very sick, and some people, you know, you always hear, well, black mold is deadly. Well, some people, mold, any kind of mold affects some people very, very strongly. I had a house about eight years ago out in Aurora where my sellers did not know they had mold until they had moved out, and I was selling their house after they had moved. And then we found out there was mold growing up in the roofing, up in the attic, I should say. And we also had a sewer pipe that every time the toilet flushed upstairs, there was a pinhole in the sewer pipe, because when the contractor remodeled the bathroom downstairs, they poked a hole in the sewer pipe to hang up the mirror, and they didn't know it. So every time the toilet flushed upstairs, water would come out that little hole and drip down to the floor. And over a period of 5, 6, 7 years, mold started to grow. Well, it so happened that the husband used to sleep in the basement 5 days a week because he got up very early to go to work. And so he didn't want to disturb his wife. So he slept in the basement, and he started having quite a bit of health problems. Then when they moved, he was feeling better, and he was just happy that he was feeling better. Well, then we come to find out the reason for that is there was mold literally within 8 feet of the bedroom. And it was quite serious. So we had to have 2 feet of the wall removed. And when they got in there, it was gross. And so we had to have that all mitigated, and the ceiling. So it was $25,000 job that they had to have, and we got it taken care of basically during the deal. Unfortunately, the buyers were able to hold on until we got it all mitigated. But that's the type of thing that can happen, that you just one little thing that you wouldn't even think of, and it was a big deal. This is a very nice crawl space, and it's concrete with this wood brace in this, probably in the center. And you can see over here, there's the furnace, a horizontal installed. Okay, so they can operate any way they need to, on their side or standing up. And if they had the water heater down there, it might be a very short one. Chances are the water heaters aren't always in the crawl space. Sometimes they're in a closet upstairs. So you may look around and find a hot water heater, but you go, well, where's the furnace? 9 times out of 10, it's in the crawl space, or once in a while, it could be installed into the attic. Okay. And a lot of times in condos, you'll find that they're installed in an attic. And one way to tell that is if all of the heat registers are up in the ceiling and not in the floor. So top units of condos, very often the furnace is up in the attic. So I just sold our own condo last year, and we had, the furnace was in the attic in the bathroom. And that's the way all the top units were, with the furnace in the attic. All the other units had the furnace on the main floor or in the basement. So you're not always going to see a furnace where you think you might. This is just another good picture of crawl spaces. So you can see they come in many different types of crawl spaces. The main thing is your inspector will be checking them out and making sure that they're in good shape. Here's a good example of a crawl space that's kind of having some issues. And probably the homeowner has tried to go in, like this one back here. They've added some support to it because it's probably started to sink. This is something you'll find a lot of times in very old homes. And you have here a cinder block type of foundation wall. Not that they are bad, but if you don't keep the moisture away from them, you're going to have problems. And I'm going to ask my structural engineer to maybe do another know before you go with me. He will point things out to you, and he's just a wealth of information. I've learned more from going on inspections or not so much inspections, but having him come to a house to check things out and just talk to him and listen to him and how he figures things out. It truly has been a huge benefit to me. Here's one where they probably dug this part out. This crawl space was probably originally at this level. Then they decided to dig part of it out for whatever reason. And then they added these support beams and concrete into it. That's not a crawl space. So I think that's enough on a crawl space. So next, we have foundations and the cause of what can happen. So this, they're probably doing a repair, but what I want to show here is when you start getting flat lots where you don't have grading away from the house, or you have a downspout that exits right next to the house and water is pouring down into the foundation, along the foundation, you start getting cracks where it's moving. Now, this happens to be a cinder block foundation. You can kind of see that it goes down and it cracks and goes over. It's what we call a stair step. This can happen to brick as well on the side of a house because of the shifting of the foundation, and the walls move and it causes that cracking. So if you're showing a house and you are seeing some cracks in the foundation, probably something is causing that to happen, and more than likely it's because of poor drainage. That's a stair step crack. This is a mess. They've had so much water intrusion and could have been from a poor drainage of a downspout or whatever, but see how rotten that wood is behind the siding? That's bad. This is not really a structural thing. You're going to see this, you guys, on the corners of a lot of foundations. And I didn't know this till last year, like 2 years ago. My structural engineer, Jim Serco, explained to me what happens on the corners of foundations. So when you're showing a house and somebody says, well, this has major foundation issues because there's all four corners have crack or a V-shaped crack. It's really not a structural issue. What happens is, let's say this is facing to the southwest, and at the end of the day, the sun beats here and the sun is very hot and it heats up the brick, right? But the concrete is set into the soil and it does not get as hot as the brick does. So the brick expands more and it pushes, and over time, it can cause the concrete to crack along that V-shaped line there on both sides and push the concrete out. The brick is swelling and then contracting as the heat changes. So you're going to see this a lot on especially 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s. And sometimes even on brand new homes, you're going to see some of this. Obviously, concrete is better than it was, and brick is different, but you'll see that crack has actually started up the brick somewhat, which could lead to some issues, although brick is not your structural member of the house. Brick is a facade that's on the front of the framing. So it's not there to hold the house up. It's there for basically appearance. Now, if it cracks, it's kind of unsightly. You really don't want cracking in your brick, but it's not what's holding the house up. Okay. This is a good example of what starts to happen when water does not get drained away from the house and it starts building up underneath the house. Then you start getting this buildup of moisture, which starts to push the soils up and down. And you can walk into this room, you can even kind of see it, that this is lower over here. And a lot of times when you go into basements, I a lot of times will take my shoes off and walk around with stocking feet so I can feel the flooring, because some people will, amazingly enough, buy the thickest carpet pad and carpeting they can to try to hide the fact that they've got some issues. And they may not disclose what they should be disclosing. Okay. Perfect example of stair step cracking that you'll see a lot of times. Like I said, this is not the structural part of the house, but it's something that you don't really want, right? There's a bad house. So what happens, they're just showing that if the soils are not draining correct and you get a buildup in the areas, the house can start pushing up in the middle, it can start sinking to the side, and then you have all kinds of cracks everywhere in the house. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the area yet, but there's a lot of homes up off of 84th, between 84th and 92nd and east of Federal. It's Old Thornton. And they go east about a mile. And most of those homes are built with what we call slab on grade. So there is no foundation. They just pour a concrete slab on the ground and then they build the house on top of it. And they didn't even pour what we would call footers or any kind of support under the concrete. So they just poured the concrete right on top of the soil. So as the soil drains or doesn't drain and the house shifts and moves, all the bricks start to crack. And most of those homes were built with brick. And you will see a plethora of those homes with all kinds of stair step cracking. Not a huge not a huge structural issue, unless it does it so much that the house starts to move, you know, a substantial amount. But if you go look at any homes up there in Old Thornton, 90% of the homes up there have stair step cracking. So what this is just showing is how they're trying to shore up the house and try to get it back to where it's level or not sinking. And, you know, things can be done. They can actually put hydraulic, drill down into the ground, put hydraulic jacks in there and actually jack a house up into the air and lift it to where it's straight. But it is not cheap at all. And that's what these are. This is just showing how they can dig down and then put these hydraulic lifts in, and they can level out a house. But I think you're probably, my guesstimate would be $2,000 to $3,000 per one of these. And you can see how quickly that would add up, especially if they have to go around most of the home. That's what these are. They're drilled down into the ground, they're attached to the foundation, and they are lifting or moving the wall up and down as needed. I think that's enough. Any questions on basic foundation stuff? Now let's go to, like, we're going to show a home and what we're going to look for. Any areas you guys want me to look at some houses in? Want me to just pull up Arvada or anything special?
Can we do Lamar Heights in Arvada?
I could. There must be a house you're looking at in Lamar Heights.
It's my neighborhood, so I'm trying to
Aha.
farm it a little bit.
Let's see, we have 4 active. We have a few pending. So these homes were essentially built 50s, 60s-ish. Is that the age of your house? Yeah.
Yep, 55.
And let's look at it first on a map. So this is always what I do before I go and show. I always kind of look, and even though if I'm familiar with the area, the other real important thing you can do, which is cool, is look at a flood map. Okay, so what does that mean? That you're in a big orange area? It's nothing bad. If you get too far out on the map, the colors don't show up. But just to the south of you, This is potential issues. This is actually big issues right across there. Now, this area used to be wider because they did a lot of work on this area along, and I don't know if you guys remember the rain we had about 3 weeks ago. But man, right over, let's see, I was at Ralston Road. Okay, I turned right on Carr and came up around here, and this is where they had dug out a lot of, they had made the ravine deeper because houses in here used to be in the flood zone all the way up towards Oberon Road. All of this area used to be within the flood zone. Now they're not, but there are still houses, as you can see, that are. Because anything in that purple or lighter blue or this green are in a bigger threat, and the flood zone map gives you the details of what you're looking at. So it's a good idea to check this out before you ever go to show. And it's kind of weird. You can see how it goes up a couple of streets like this. If they're in a flood zone, they're going to be paying more money for flood insurance. But it's a good idea to just check it out. Which side of, are you over here?
No, I'm up a little further north, 64th and Lamar.
Okay. Yeah, so you don't have
Mm-mm.
any worry, which I
That's
think you
good.
would, but right?
So, Bob, when we do have homes that are, if we're selling a home that's that's on a floodplain like that, is there anything else that we navigate other than letting them know that their flood insurance will be more expensive, and of course being aware that they're on the floodplain?
Yep.
Anything else you would identify?
And you just want to identify that, and the listing agent should make you aware of that, because the seller should say, hey, we're in a flood zone, just so people know. But it's going to, and then another way you can just verify it, going to Chelsea or David in Altitude there and just give them the address and they'll pull it up too. And then they can kind of give you an idea. Flood insurance is not as horribly expensive as it used to be, but it's still probably at a minimum going to be an extra $100 to $125 a month. Right. So it's nothing to sneeze at, and it could cause, if your people are right on the border of qualifying for a $450,000 house, and now they've got flood insurance on top of that, it may knock them out. So it's a good idea to know. And you don't know unless you know, right? And when you look at a map, a national or a citywide flood map, there are a lot of areas in town. There's an area just south of Colfax, down around 12th, where the light rail runs east and west from Golden to downtown. And there's a ravine along there, and there's a lot of area down there where there's a pretty good sized flood zone. And you can see as we're going along here, like this is, where are we at? 52nd. And this is I-70, so down in this area here, whereas a big one is over here in Globeville. When we get close to that, this used to have some really bad flood zone area, where this used to all be kind of purple and blue, but they did a lot of revamping, and they got rid of a lot of a lot of houses that were close to I-70 used to be right in a flood zone, and they used to have some serious problems. But you've got the river runs right down here, the South Platte runs right through, and it used to filter over to these houses. Okay. So that's the one thing I would always look at before you go to a listing, is just check out the flood zone. Then when you look at the house, like if I was going to go show this house, this is very common. It's a very flat lot for back when they were built. That's just the way they did it. But these people have had, at least for a while, have had some good extensions on. I don't see a lot of sinking towards, like this rock is not sinking backwards towards the house really much. So overall, the outside appearance looks pretty good. I don't see a lot of sidewalk tilting left, right, or heaving and cracking. That can sometimes be caused by like a tree this size. If the tree was over here, the roots can come across and cause the sidewalk to heave and crack. That's an interesting thing. Looks like a window that they have built for egress. Maybe it says on there, let me look here. Basement egress, yes. So they have a basement egress. Now, I don't know if they put a drain down here, because with a basement egress that size, and if you get a downpour like yesterday, that could fill up to here in no time. So that's one thing to be aware of. I don't see anything much wrong, except the agent can't hold their camera straight, and why don't they pay for a professional photographer? But that's me. Terrible photos. Wow, amazing.
Right.
Yeah, a little bit of cracking there with, this is very nominal considering the age of the house for a garage. And remember, the garage floor is not attached to the house. It's a separate part, and it's flat work. It's not structural. This is the basement. Oh, no, it's the front of the garage. This is a workshop at the front of the garage. So they've taken quite a bit of care to try to get water away. Now, again, we don't know where these underground things lead to. Sometimes an inspector will find them, or you can get a hose and put it up in the gutter and try to get the water to run out somewhere. But at least they have got a fair amount of room between the house and the grass. Okay. Again, those photos are horrible because it doesn't really tell you how you're going through the house, and it's not well lit. And it doesn't show very well, and it's been on the market for 41 days. So price, and some people are going to look at those photos and go, I don't even want to see it. Right? Next. 6660 Pierce. So how long has this been? This has been on the market 6 days at 120,000 less than the last house.
Already looks better than the first one. Just
Now,
from the
see-
photo quality alone.
Oh, the photo quality alone was terrible. Now, see, these people have got a splash block here, a long one. They have extensions here. They've got the water out past into the grass, and they've got a huge one out here, way out into the grass. So right off the bat, I know that they have some pride of ownership. They're taking care. You can kind of look at the roofing and see that the roofing is in pretty good shape, at least from the photos. Don't see anything alarming other than a little bit of, I can't tell if that's a hole or if that's just, I think that might be waterproofing that's painted on there. I don't think it's a void under it. But the it might have sunk a little bit. As you can see up by the front door there, it's separated a little bit. But flat work shifts. I mean, when you have a house that age, flat work is going to move some. When it doesn't move, it's kind of amazing. And that could be the original driveway, and it's still amazingly flat, right? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but much better photos, much better presentation. My people are going to be more likely to say, hey, let's go look at this than the first one, especially for 120,000 less. And it looks nicer. I was hoping to see some back. Okay, so one thing I try to look at in the back. So what does this tell me? This pipe here. Anybody know?
Radon.
Radon.
Thank you. Radon. So, well, some people are going to go to, do we need to worry about radon? Well, get online and read about it. But I will tell you this, that Colorado has one of the higher instances of lung cancer of people who do not smoke, and it could be attributed to radon. Okay, so radon is the colorless, odorless, tasteless gas that is emitted underneath the ground from fossil fuel, everything, and it can build up. And what they do is they drill a pipe down into the under the foundation that's perforated, that comes up, that comes out the side of the house. This is a vacuum system that kicks on and it emits out the top. And this is supposed to emit above the roof line. It's not supposed to stop before the roof line. So you could blow it over to your neighbor's house and they can breathe the radon, right? The other thing I try to get a good sense of is, does it look like they've done any upgrading to the electric panel? That looks to me like it's the original panel. And part of the reason I think that, because this mast is not very high up off the roof. So I'll check out the electrical panel. I write a note to myself, check, because I don't want to sell a house that has a Federal Pacific panel or a Lensco or some other ones, but those are ones that can be a fairly serious hazard potentially. Yes, the house is still sitting there, but they can become an issue, those panels. Okay, so those are just things that I look at. One thing to look at too in this house, they've got a nice flow away from the house. So the drainage is pretty darn good on this house considering where it's located and when it was built. Yep. Have you previewed the homes in your area, Liz?
A little bit, not officially, just kind of doing my own previewing.
Yeah, go look at them and it'll give you a sense of, what's out there and what to look for.
Do you
And now-
recommend doing that by just going through and seeing what homes are available and scheduling my own walkthroughs and just doing that as my own previewing?
Good, yes.
Okay,
Or go with a couple other people, or if you have questions about something, I'll go look at a home or two with you and point things out to you.
awesome. I would love that.
Okay, remember that, have you seen this house in your neighborhood? Looks like they've got some pretty good. Oh, here we have another agent with their camera, with their cell phone. That's
Terrible. Was that a
So you
family?
got a
photo?
carabiner here on your basket. God. Oh, enough, Bob, shut up. Oh my God, just horrible photos.
These are terrible.
Okay, what is this on top of the roof?
Warm cooler?
Thank you. It's also called evaporative cooler. It's air conditioning. And typically your insurance is going to be a little bit more because this has water up here in it. And if there's ever a leak, where does it go? Into the house, right? They are efficient, but they do tend to, if you have clients that have problems with allergies, make sure they're aware, especially if they're moving here from a very damp climate where they probably don't have a swamp cooler, that these can cause some more issues because you're pulling in allergens into the house from an outside damp source. So just something to be aware of. And that's all the pictures they took, huh? 13 of them for that house. Let's see. Oh, it's only been on the market 92 days. I wonder if there's any correlation between the photos and the house being on the market that long.
Hey, Bob, the other thing with swamp coolers, at
Yes.
least I owned a house that had one,
Uh-huh.
is if you want to cover it up or if you want to like just turn it on and off on the top, you have to climb up on that roof. I
Yes, you
hated
do.
doing that stuff.
Yeah, and if you've got a 70-year-old buyer like me, you don't want to be climbing up on the roof, so you're probably going to have to hire somebody, right? And you really just can't keep them that clean. Wow. This one looks like it's got some issues. Excuse me
Major.
one second, guys. I gotta let my plumber in the house.
This one looks rough.
Here he comes. Go get him, McGregor. Go get him. What is up with this house? Let me see here. Just went on the market. Yo,
Hey. TV guys on their way.
okay, so we have no bedrooms, no baths. So great opportunity to build in a redevelopment area, very large lot with newer 2-car garage. Home is down to the studs and unsafe to enter. Home is secured by security fence. Please do not enter fencing. Call listing agent for details. Kimberly Pintinello used to do a lot of foreclosure stuff. So this is probably, let's see, yes, seller is Victoria Capital Trust. Okay. Structure is unsafe. So hopefully she took pictures. Yeah, she took 13 pictures. Have you seen that one, Liz?
No, where is this one?
You gonna go buy it?
Oh, maybe just
Maybe.
knock that down and put a tiny home on it.
There you go, 6975 West 61st.
I'm gonna go look at it. 385. Wow.
Yeah. Well, it needs a lot. Oh, wow. Look at there. You can see right into the basement. Good Lord.
This looks like a pure demo project.
Oh my gosh. And these pipes coming up, these are the sewer cleanouts that usually in newer, you won't typically find them much in older homes because they didn't do cleanouts installation. But these are cleanouts that you can go, a plumber can access it from here and do a scope and go into the house and look at the line from here in, and then scope it from here out to this, out to the main, wherever that happens to be. Okay. But yeah, this is, might have had a fire in this house or something. Hard to say. Man.
It almost looks like it was dug out around the foundation too.
Yeah, and you see all this stair step cracking. Windows are, man, that house is not in good shape. Yeah, fire,
Oh, definitely a fire.
yeah. Huh. You know what, you should keep track of that, Liz, and see how much it ends up closing for.
I will, absolutely.
Because
That's
385 with all the work, I mean, it really, I think it needs scraped.
same.
And is the lot really worth that much? Because the lot still needs a lot of work. It looks like it's.
Yeah. It needs some
Yeah.
leveling and yeah,
Mhm.
that's.
I was
oh,
gonna say
Okay.
that it's still overpriced based on the condition of that house.
Totally agree.
Seems like it. Let's look at it from above.
Looks like the garage they attempted to put a little work
Just-
into.
It's interesting because I've sold. Let's see. I sold this house as a foreclosure with this land 15 years ago, my partners and I. Yeah, this, I don't know, that just seems like a lot of money, but keep an eye on it. It will be interesting to see what it does go for. Let's
I'll
look
keep
at
tabs on it and we'll let
one,
you know.
yeah, let's look at one more. Now, here's a good example when I was talking when we first started class about showing homes on a hill. So here's a good example because obviously there's a hill above this and there's going to be groundwater coming towards this house. And then, boy, being next to them is really downhill. And I would be hesitant. But while my people were looking, they pull up and they go, oh my God, this is our dream house. This is so cute. And go, great guys, you look around. I'm going to go into the basement and I'm going to look and see if I see anything that, you know, could be an issue. So don't see anything here that really shows. But you have to kind of wait. And this is probably a fix and flip. So they're going to put the proverbial lipstick on a pig if they can and hide things if it is a flip. So you do need to be careful about that. And so what I oftentimes do is just go right to the tax and find out who owns it, when they bought it, and how long, maybe when did they buy it, so we know a little bit more. So this previous sale date was 2010. So it looks like this is probably just the owner fixing it up and selling it. Okay, which is good. Better than somebody who bought it 2 months ago and put some money into it and wants to make 200,000. So let's get to the basement because we know the upstairs is going to look okay. Nicely done. Since it's finished, you can't really see issues if there are any, but overall, it doesn't look like it. This has got a newer electrical panel, which is good. Don't see a lot of cracking even in this flat work, and this is probably the original flat work on the back patio. You see how tall that mast is? That's a fairly strong indication that you have newer panel also, because they typically have that mast up higher, which gets the wire up off the ground more, so somebody can't jump up and grab onto it. So that's a very nice home. And no wonder it went under contract in 2 days. And it's priced just 20,000 over that 2-story that agent took those lovely pictures of. So those are some things to look out before I go show. And I look, again, I look at flood zone to start with, just to know. And then go forward from there. But, you know, go preview these houses, you guys, and just learn more about your neighborhood, where you live, and more about areas that you want to work in. The thing that helped me the most in my earlier career, not early, but I was in the business roughly 10 years when my old partner, at that time, he wasn't my partner at Metro Brokers, but he came to me and said, I'm going to need help with foreclosures. Can you help? And I ended up doing roughly 1,500 BPOs, broker price opinions, over a period of 7 or 8 years. So I went into a lot of homes all over town and got to see a great many different homes in different situations in different areas, and learned a lot about the city that way, because I was in stuff from Broomfield pretty much down to Highlands Ranch and up into Bailey and clear out to Deer Trail. So that really helped me a lot, because I got to really understand what the market was like in different places and what homes were, the construction and the quality or lack of quality. So it'd be a good idea for you guys to just get out and preview 5 to 10 homes a week in different areas. You don't have to go to Colorado Springs. Just go to different areas in town here. Okay. Any questions? Was that helpful today?
Very
Good.
helpful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Very helpful.
All right. Always here for you guys. Let me know if you need something.
Thank you, Bob.
Take care. Have a great day.
Thanks, Bob. Have a good day.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
You're welcome. Huh?
Yeah.